All right, gang. First of all, thanks for coming to the Excerpt channel and checking out this excerpt, clip, if you will, of an ASP podcast episode from the recent past. So it's not a whole episode. Whole episodes are available only on the app in the video form. You can listen anywhere you want, any podcast outlet. Listen to the audio version, not a problem. For the video version, if you want to watch the whole thing, get the app. It is literally free to watch on the app. No payment, no subscription required. Go over there, check it out, and I hope you enjoy the clip. Well, alrighty, gang, welcome back to the Gutowski Files, starring our very own Stephen Gutowski. Stephen is the owner and editor-in-chief and founder over at TheReload.com. That's TheReload.com. Go give that a look and consider getting a membership. Stephen, how are you, sir?
Palm pepper spray is next generation OC spray. It's hot at 1.4% major capsaicinoids, and its modular design means you can customize it exactly to you. 3 different setups, lots of different color combinations. You can make it exactly as you like. And the flip top safety prevents accidental discharges. It's 10 to 12 foot range and 25 half-second blasts. Make sure that you can keep that long range eye poke at long range. I trust Palm OC and I recommend it for everyone for self-defense.
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm just going to assume, for the sake, so we don't have to talk about it, we're not going to do sports talk this week out of sensitivity to our friends in Philadelphia.
I'm okay with that. Although
okay,
the Phillies are, they're second in the NL, so
that's
looking
true.
forward to
They're
that.
doing very well. So yeah, the playoffs are just starting, right? Like yesterday?
Yeah, I think so. The wild card starts.
Very good. So this week we're going to discuss a article over at The Reload discussing the California gun rights lawyer. Excuse me. Let me start that over. We're going to discuss an article over at The Reload discussing Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris's evident position on handguns, personally owned handguns, back when she was the district attorney of the city of San Francisco. I think everyone knows she used to be the DA, and she was the attorney general and a senator from California before being the vice president under Joe Biden. So talk to us about this. About how long ago are we talking about?
This was 2005. Harris was the district attorney for San Francisco at the time. And there was a proposition put on the ballot for voters in San Francisco called Proposition H, which was a total ban on handgun ownership, handgun sales, manufacture, and also possession, with limited exceptions for essentially active duty police, law enforcement, and security guards. Mm-hmm. Everyone else who owned a handgun in San Francisco would have to turn their handgun in to authorities if, after, I think it was 90 days after the effective date of the measure. And the measure did pass. And Harris was actually one of the few local or state officials to support this proposition. There were 4 Board of Supervisor members who supported it, which is the minimum needed to get it on the ballot. They didn't have enough to pass it through the city or county Board of Supervisors, but they had enough to get it on for a vote. And it passed with, I believe it was 58%. Of
50% of the
voters
people who live in the city of San Francisco. So for folks who don't
know, voted in the election, yeah.
Yeah, and I just so people are clear, so this was when she was DA of the city of San Francisco, so this would affect only the city of San Francisco, not the whole state of California, right?
Yes, that's right. And so this was actually something that was fairly controversial within the gun control movement, even at the time, even though this was about 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And because you had the mayor of San Francisco at the time was Gavin Newsom, who's now the governor of California and who's a staunch gun control activist who is even trying to partially repeal the Second Amendment. I'm sure most people have probably forgotten about that by now because it didn't go anywhere, but that was something he's proposed. And then also Dianne Feinstein, who was the former mayor of San Francisco and was Senator California at the time. She didn't support, neither of them supported this measure. Now, they didn't support it because Dianne Feinstein had actually successfully implemented a handgun ban in San Francisco decades earlier, which was then subsequently struck down by the California Supreme Court as violating state preemption laws. We've talked about preemption laws,
Yep.
I think, before
Yeah,
on the show. Yeah, and so essentially that's a law that says the state has dominion over gun regulations. And so at the time, California had one, and it foreclosed this idea. And that precedent was still in effect in 2005 when the city council, with the support of Kamala Harris, put this total handgun ban on the ballot. So, it wasn't as though Newsom or Feinstein were opposed to it on constitutional grounds or something. They just thought it wasn't going to work. And I mean, spoiler, people probably should know this since there is no handgun ban in San Francisco today. It didn't work. It was struck down by an appeals court a couple of years later, actually right before the Heller decision at the federal Supreme Court, which struck down Washington, D.C.'s similar ban on handgun ownership by civilians, and sort of established that these laws are not constitutional, in addition to also violating state preemption law in California. So the measure ended up losing on the grounds that the gun control activists and gun rights activists who were opposed to the measure thought it was going to lose on in the end. But we have evidence that she supported this. There was a contemporary report in the San Jose Mercury News that named her as one of the few people, in addition to those city board of supervisor members who backed the measure. And then we also have the gun rights lawyer who sued over this measure. His name is Chuck Michel. He's still actually the president of the California Rifle and Pistol Association, and was working with the NRA at the time as well to file suit against this measure. And he said, yes, Harris backed this effort to ban handguns in San Francisco. So, and he actually was on the Weekly Reload podcast, the most recent one, where we talked about this, and then a number of the other fights he's gotten into with Kamala Harris over the years while she was DA of San Francisco, then Attorney General of California, then a senator, and now obviously vice president running for president. So, pretty significant, I think, story about her record on this issue, especially given that in recent weeks, obviously, Harris has played up to a significant degree her own ownership of handguns.
My next question was going to be, has anyone asked her about this in light of those more recent statements?
Yeah, I guess a number of outlets. Obviously, we were the first ones to report on this story, but she didn't. Her campaign hasn't responded to us, and then a number of other outlets, the New York Post, Daily Caller, Fox News, asked about this at the White House briefing to the White House press secretary, who didn't answer and referred questions to the Harris campaign or the vice president's office, and who just, I don't know, their strategy is just to not acknowledge this or respond to it at all, it seems. So we don't have any further, we don't have any statement from her or her campaign on this one.
Yeah, and unfortunately for everybody involved, and this isn't just on the right or on the left, it's on the right too, being asked a specific question and deferring and demurring and not answering the question works. Unfortunately, from what I'm seeing recently, it works to just ignore it and it'll go away. And it does for some reason. I don't know. It seems pretty consistent.
Sometimes. But, obviously the thing about this story is that it's a pretty significant detail, right? Because one of her selling points this election is that she owns a handgun herself. And so she doesn't want to take anyone's guns. And, that may well be, she may be telling the truth there. People change their minds. Politicians change their positions all the time. This was a long time ago, but it is part of her record. And I think it would be more than fair for her to explain why she has changed her mind on this position. And also, a number of other questions too. Like, did she own this handgun at the time she supported the handgun ban? Because from what we understand from reporting, she, again, hasn't answered many questions on the gun she owns or when exactly she bought it. She said she bought it for self-protection because she was a prosecutor. And this would have been that. I mean, I always got the feeling she was talking about even before she was DA of San Francisco, but I mean, it could be any period between. She was a lower level prosecutor before she was DA of San Francisco in Alameda County. And then obviously Attorney General, you could describe them as prosecutors, right? So it could be any period of time there. And so we don't know exactly when she bought this handgun. And if she had it during the time, was she going to turn it in, or did she believe she was exempt? Why should she be allowed to own a handgun while other residents of San Francisco aren't? If she bought it afterwards, why did she support a handgun ban and then go buy a handgun?